Hello and welcome to The Promised Land, a show about Manchester United and part of the 90 Min podcast network. I'm Scott Saunders, joined by Rob Blanchette. Per usual on Rob, this is not going well. Everything surrounding Manchester United at the moment is not going well, is it? So we will try our best today. I think Rob and I have just had a conversation before the show started where ultimately there is a hell of a lot that we could discuss around how awful it is around Manchester United at the moment, but we would like to take a slightly different direction and look a little bit more on the positive side if there are any things positive to discuss. Are you positive, Rob?
Am I positive? I think that it's not a case of we just searching for positive content. There is some positives. So like we want to talk about some of them, but there's also a lot of stuff that is wrong. And there's also a lot of stuff that we literally cannot talk about at the moment and shouldn't talk about. So we'll address those things in the future. I think people, when they watch us, Scott, they kind of go, oh, you're being a little bit mystical there. What are you talking about? Well, all will be revealed, I'm sure, at some point. But I think there are things that we will talk about in this international break where they have been positives or stuff to look forward to. And we're going to give one or two players their flowers today.
Yeah, Rob is particularly keen to give one player his flowers. And you might have seen his tweet but yesterday, Thursday, before the show.
Yes.
But it is an international break. And obviously, there's no football for Man United to be playing. But they are still in the headlines. Rob has mentioned that, like, obviously, as we addressed on the last show, there is a case surrounding Antony at the moment, which we said a bit on the show on Tuesday about how we're going to approach that topic. So scoot back to the start of that episode, the last episode that we did, if you'd like to hear where we are on that. And obviously, as things develop, we will address in due course. But we feel like we have to again talk about Jadon Sancho and the situation around him, because there has been more fallout around his position in the squad over the last few days. And I think, I won't say my position's changed on it, but I certainly have more to say about how it's developed over the last few days. But obviously, if Jadon Sancho is not integrated back into the team, there are questions to be asked on what Erik ten Hag does on the right-hand side of the attack. So we will maybe go into some depth about that and what the options are. We'll talk about injuries to Sofiane Amrabat and Lautaro Martinez and try and hopefully clear some things up there. But the player that Rob wants to give flowers to is Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So we'll get into that later on in the show. And we'll try and end this Bruno Fernandes' birthday today. It is 8th of September and he's 29. So maybe we'll do a little bit of reflection on United's club captain towards the end of the show to make you feel, hopefully, a little bit better. Subscribe if you'd like to feel better. Wherever you get your podcasts and watch us on YouTube, The Promised Land and Manchester United podcast. Like the video, subscribe, leave a comment as well. Pop the notification bell on so you never miss an episode on YouTube. Follow us on social media at @_Scott Saunders on X, TikTok, and Instagram. I posted a TikTok earlier this week, Rob, and it got no views at all. Algorithm is bad.
Bad algorithms.
I need to figure it out. I've had some actual viral ones in the past, but I think you have to post consistently.
You've got a dance spot on them. That's why. If you dance, and then you're in.
Have you seen Robert Lewandowski's dances on TikTok?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you need to, that's been for a while. I'll let you go and watch that afterwards.
I'll investigate.
At @Rob_B on X and YouTube, and Rob will start doing some Robert Lewandowski dances on TikTok if it is there by popular demand.
There's a demand. If there's a demand. But you might find it on my YouTube channel at @Rob_B. That might be where I do the dancing. So subscribe there and you might get a shock. Or a surprise, however you view it.
Maybe, yeah. And at @PromiseAndMU on X as well. Right, okay. Fun times ahead. Let's talk Jadon Sancho to start with, because on Tuesday's show, we obviously discussed what Erik ten Hag said in his post-match after the Arsenal game, and Jadon Sancho's response on social media, which is still there. That has not been taken down. But over the last...
It's been pinned as well.
Been pinned as well. Yeah, so, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But I think over the last few days, like since we just did our last podcast, Rob, there's been things that I have not liked, particularly not from... I didn't like how Sancho responded, and I think we both said the other day that he shouldn't have responded like that on social media. Should have been done in private. Now what we're seeing is a bit of a... And I've seen people refer to it as essentially the beginnings of a character assassination of Jadon Sancho.
Yes.
And you could say that. I mean, essentially, yes. It's essentially trying to say that Jadon Sancho is not cut out for Man United. And there's another report which is floating around on Friday morning, which is the players have had enough of him. And in between these has been Erik ten Hag was not authorized to discuss perceived mental health issues around Jadon Sancho when he was absent from the team a few months ago back last season. This has escalated now into what is essentially a briefing war between two camps. And I don't like it at all. I feel like this is instigated on United's side, really.
I use that word as well, character assassination hyphenated, because when you look at those things and you look at what's now coming out post the game at Arsenal, everything that's been said, going into an international break where news agencies are looking around for stories and trying to push things and narratives and objectives. I think when you look at Jadon pinning the tweet, I said on the last show, I'm sure he probably stands by what he was trying to say. It's just that he didn't say it particularly well or very articulately to his massive audience of millions. Now, I think, Scott, when we look at all this and you read things like he's not popular in the dressing room and all of this, that's when you immediately know it's rubbish.
It's not true either, is it?
No, it's not just untrue. It's a lie. It's a bone-faced, absolute, complete lie. I can't even get my words out because he's massively popular at Manchester United. And I've seen the comparisons to Paul Pogba in that sense, because they used to say about Paul Pogba was unpopular at Man United. And then literally any player you ever spoke to at United or any coach or anyone behind the scenes, the tea lady, everyone was like, oh, that Paul's a lovely boy. So that's the narrative. That's the image, because that's being created, because a bad image against Jadon Sancho sells, gets you clicks. If we did a show today, Scott, on that, and our show was Jadon Sancho is a wicked boy, oh, and he should be, that people like that, they click on that stuff. We're not doing that show because it's not real, it's not true. So I think the things with Jadon Sancho, like you just said, that it's a briefing war, and of course, in this situation, it's almost impossible to avoid that, because Manchester United do brief certain journalists. We know this, and Jadon Sancho's camp will be trying to defend him in a kind of covert way without...
I think that's what's happened with what the Daily Mail released on Thursday night.
And that is, of course, par for the course. That's football and that's the media. So that happens. And I think Jadon Sancho's camp will be massively concerned for their client in terms of his well-being and how he sees this and maybe how he's feeling. And that's their responsibility. But do you know who other's responsibility is, Scott? Manchester United. Manchester United need to look at this and the bigger picture. And this is not faction against faction. We're the same thing. Jadon Sancho works for Manchester United. He plays for our football club. So resolution will be the next step. And I've got no doubt, because knowing what Ten Hag is as a conservative, how he likes to do these things, that he now needs to kind of think about what he does with Jadon Sancho. He's not going to cut his nose off to spite his face, Scott. If he can get a goal out of Sancho or an assist out of Sancho, guess what he's doing? He's getting that out of him. That's what he wants. That's all he wants. He wants football results. He doesn't want these storms, these Twitter storms, as I described it yesterday. But I also think that United could have moved a bit quicker now. Like after the Arsenal game, they should have within the first 2 or 3 days looked for resolution. But of course, people went on holiday because of the international break. Other players left. Jadon Sancho is not on an international break. He's not playing for England. So these things could have been resolved quicker. But Man United have decided to leave it for a little bit and let it settle. When you do that, Scott, that normally means,
let's just say it's not settled.
It's not settling. The waves that are rolling into shore look like they're turning into a tsunami. And if you allow that to happen and let that crash on your shore and drown everyone, and again, that's on Manchester United, the operation side of the business. You know, if I'm Richard Arnold, I'm saying we sort this out today. Let's get it sorted and put it out and do a statement or a picture or something. United are not doing that. So
this should have been sorted out on Monday.
Of course, the storm prevails. And that's why I also said that as refreshing as Erik ten Hag is in his assessments in press conferences, it would definitely have been a wiser just to say, oh, he got a knock in training and kept it in-house. So, you know, so there's blame on every side. And what, of course, fans want to do and the media is to find the acute blame that they can lean on. And, of course, that's easy. Then it's the player, isn't it? You just lean on the player. Oh, you got 3 months off last year. Oh, this happened. Oh, that happened. None of that matters, does it? You got dropped because you weren't as good in training as maybe the manager wanted you to be. And that's the story. That's the way it should be. So, you know, fingers crossed, I think they can resolve it. But now that the Saudi transfer window is effectively over, you have no transfer window till January. People say, no, he'll be sold in January. Who sells a talent of that value in January? Very unlikely, unless, of course, they do get back together and can't find resolution. You know, Jadon Sancho goes in now and says, I don't want to work for you anymore. That might be a thing, but I don't believe that's it. I don't believe that. He said
in his statement he wants to play football.
He wants to play football. He wants to defend the badge. He likes playing with all the staff, playing staff that are there. He respects that and he respects the coaches. So his, like, again, we've seen the reporting today. I'm not going to name journalists, have said that Jadon Sancho's angry rant, it wasn't an angry rant. He was putting out something there, trying to defend himself in a position where he probably shouldn't have had to. So, like, it's silly and it's wrong and he deserves a fine and maybe, you know, slap on the hand and then you would get on with the job. Like, you know, Jadon Sancho's a footballer, get him kicking a football around. I didn't like it, Scott, that he wasn't part of that squad. I still might have had him in the squad. You know what I mean? He's one of your prime talents. But I also understand that the manager's got carte blanche for that. If he doesn't want him there for whatever reason, then he goes and sits on his sofa for a week. And that should have been the end of it, you know. And people saying, oh, Jadon pinning his tweet. Yeah, that's not a good look either. But I think that he's trying to double down on what he was trying to say. And just think it's come out wrong. Just think he... You know, I think he was making a statement about the football world being on his shoulders as opposed to Erik ten Hag.
Well, if anything, he used the word scapegoat in his statement.
Yeah.
And I know we had our say on him the other day, but that was strictly about that incident and about the fact that Sancho, I think I used some along the lines of mentality needs to change within the entire team, and that statement and the fact he reacted like that proves that exists, and that Erik ten Hag needs to change that round. I hope anyway that I didn't overstep a line and like talk about. I feel like there's been some lines crossed over the last few days, which are completely unfair.
And they smell like a witch hunt.
Yeah, and the word scapegoat is actually appropriate.
Yeah, I think Jadon, without knowing it, wrote all the headlines in those 2 paragraphs. He just didn't realize he was. He sat at home going, hang on a second, I'm getting attacked here by fan channels and these big United fan accounts. I've got 250,000 followers and a million followers here, and they're all on me. What do I do? Well, I respond with a tweet. Well, no, that's not the right thing to do. But using the word scapegoat, of course, just became the headline copywriter's dream, didn't it? Because he put it out there, and as you said on our show, Scott, it then becomes open to interpretation. But I think as soon as you read it and actually read it and think about it and what Ten Hag actually said, he's not saying he's a scapegoat for Erik ten Hag or a scapegoat for the coaches or scapegoat for his fellow pros. He's saying in the media he's been made a scapegoat. And I don't think he's wrong. And the reaction proves it. The reaction from the press in the last 2 days, where they have absolutely ripped his head off and called him all sorts and are now going down the Pogba route of demonization. I said that at the time with Paul Pogba. I was like, whatever you think about Paul Pogba, yeah, he failed at United in terms of his career. Like, he didn't achieve what we wanted him to. And yes, the injuries finished him off at Man United. But yeah, every time he had a haircut, there was 1,000 articles written about it. And it was all about demonization as opposed to supporting someone. Jadon's an easy target because he has fallen out of favour with England. He's no longer the golden boy of English football when he signed for Man United. And Man United are an easy target for the press anyway, just in general, because they don't look after their own. So The last few days has been absolutely that. Jadon Sancho has been totally proven right that he is a scapegoat. And yeah, he fueled some of the fire and it was silly. But young men sometimes don't have a grasp on maybe the mature aspects of the media and what the media's objective is. Sometimes they're very naive, even when you work in the game and you're a professional footballer of his standard. So I feel sorry for him now. Like I think that United need to find resolution very quickly because it might not be very long. I keep saying this, he might be your option on the right. You might have to talk about that soon with the winger situation with another winger who might well not be playing for Manchester United very, very soon, and that will develop very quickly. Jadon Sancho might be a piece that you have to lean on now in the next several weeks and get form out of him. And sometimes that's what it is with football clubs, Scott. You have to get the form out of the play. You have to help them become the best player they can be.
Well, let's move in that direction then, because we did say at the top of the show we did want to discuss what the actual options are on the right-hand side of attack. Yeah. Because I think you said the other day Rashford right, Garnacho left, and Højlund middle. I think we've established really that Rashford's best position is on the left-hand side.
Absolutely.
But also Garnacho's, it probably is as well. And when Garnacho comes on, Rashford shifts over, and United have that kind of speed in attack with all three of them.
Yeah.
But let's say Sancho is, for some reason, we don't find resolution here, and he is essentially frozen out. Now, I think we hope that doesn't happen.
I'll be shocked.
Yeah, I would be too. But what are the other options on that side? Because, I think we have been having some discussions with some guys at work of, Mason Mount's played out there before. I know he's injured currently. Bruno Fernandes has played out there before and continues to, which I don't think you like, do you? But they also do have...
Not against it.
They do have options in the center of midfield now, and they have a striker up front. So a striker up front who can potentially provide an aerial threat. So Christian Eriksen has played out on the right before for Tottenham. There's a kind of like a tucked-in advanced playmaker. And you've got options, right?
Yeah. Look, one of the things that Erik ten Hag said in this now infamous press conference where he talked about Jadon Sancho, he said, "I've actually got quite good forward options. So this is why the game has changed a little
bit." Sorry, I forgot about
Pellistri. And you got Pellistri, and we'll talk about him. But in your front six positions, so your non-defensive positions, you have now got more options. Now, again, going back, rewind a few weeks, we actually said United are probably not as wanting in those positions as maybe they have been in the last 2, 3 or 4 years, is that you now got a little bit of coverage, a little bit of choice. And the reason why last year you saw when Man United formationally you were playing that kind of 4-1-5, you were seeing that when Antony wasn't on the right-hand side of the pitch, that Bruno Fernandes was there. And then you started to see the introduction of Pellistri, didn't you? So Ten Hag, I think, feels comfortable about that kind of front three, the left side, the right side. And I think he'd like another striker, of course, but he's now got one. So he's going to work with that striker, and that striker is going to be the starter. I last week said that that Rashford would play on the right and Garnacho on the left, not because of Rashford, but because of Garnacho. So Garnacho, I think, in the pecking order, is the next one who starts, and Garnacho is infinitely obviously better off the left, doesn't play on the right, really. So I think that's why he will probably choose that if he's playing a 4-2-3-1. I think that's where he'll go back to. But I will not be surprised if Bruno Fernandes plays there. So Bruno Fernandes played there a lot last year, and I did tons of content of, all right, Bruno's not the number 10, so why? Is it because the manager doesn't like him at number 10? Or is it because the manager wants him in, say, a wider role where he can set traps and do all that work and cross the ball into the middle? And I think it is more the latter. I think that Bruno can still give you a lot of production on the right. And then what have you got in the middle, Scott, now? You've just bought this lad Amrabat. You've got Christian Eriksen. You've got Mason Mount. And Mason Mount can play all of the front 3 or 4 positions. And I think Mason Mount, when he's back, fingers crossed after the international break, like we've not heard an update yet, but if he's back relatively soon, I think you'll see Mason Mount making up the numbers at the top end. So then Jadon Sancho, see, there's less weight on Jadon, is that they can kind of get Jadon where they want to be without saying, right, Jadon, you just got to start. I think Jadon will be part of the picture, but I think he will be still coming from the bench to having to prove himself. And that's probably the right thing to do. Pellistri as well, good opportunity if he gets chance minutes on the right-hand side. But I don't know if I would throw him straight in as it stands.
Yeah, we said we'd try and go in a positive direction. Let's talk about the positives of somebody like Bruno Fernandes playing on the right-hand side. So you've got Casemiro, who has been massively criticised in the early weeks of the season, lost his legs, that kind of thing. But I think, Rob, both me and you in the early weeks of the season have both said that Casemiro, Bruno, Mount midfield, the balance ain't there. It doesn't work. And I think we've tried it. Obviously, Mount's injury has forced United into playing slightly differently. You've got Christian Eriksen, though, as well, who has been playing the deep lying role in midfield, doesn't offer that defensive protection. But now you have options. So you have, hopefully, Kobe will be back not immediately, but hopefully be back at some point soon. And you have Sofiane Amrabat, who we'll talk about. There's rumors of him having an injury. We don't think that's too serious to worry about, do we? Right. Okay.
No, it's a knock.
So precaution. Amrabat is in. He probably won't start straight away, but I think when the international break finishes and United go into that run of games and the Champions League begins and that kind of thing, then he will be integrated into the team. But then let's say you can potentially name, with Bruno on the right, a midfield of Casemiro, Amrabat, and either Eriksen or Mason Mount at the 10 with Bruno on the right. That strikes me. Mount in there especially, I would say, because of his energy and his pressing. That strikes me as a hell of a lot better balanced than what we've seen in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Totally agree. And I also think that with the injuries is that Ten Hag's been limited in his overall choices just to kind of move tactical things around. I thought we would play 4-2-3-1 at Arsenal. And, you and me both agree, though obviously Arsenal fans don't, that thought Man United played quite well. And for me, that's a building block. I think Ten Hag will look at the positives of that and he won't stick with the system like without changing things. But I think at Old Trafford, you'll play something more front-footed, like a 4-1-5. And at Old Trafford, you'll play 4-3-3 when you can. But I think on the road, and I think in games where you need to control stuff and control tempo and possession, you're going to play 4-2-3-1. What does that mean? That means Casemiro and Amrabat at the base. So those two are going to now be tasked with looking after that area. Now Casemiro has got a playmate with him who's really good at those things and good at interception and aggressive and all of that. It means Scott,
and also can progress the ball.
Absolutely. Great ball progressor, really good on the deck, can kind of play that short game and get you going. It does mean now that you can now say to Eriksen, right, you are going to operate in a more advanced role. What happened yesterday with Christian Eriksen for Denmark? 3 assists. So you played
3. They did play San Marino though, didn't they?
A hat-trick of assists was the headline. So he got 3 assists and they were good assists. And if Christian Eriksen is allowed to operate in the front 4 or in the top end of the pitch or your final third, I think Christian Eriksen gets you assists. It's just what he is. It's what he's built his career on. One of the greatest assisters in Premier League history throughout his career. So let's use him for that. Like we're talking about what do we do in the front line. I don't like Eriksen off the right. I don't think he has the dexterity to do that role off the ball. Like it's just not his thing. I do think that he has value as a floating 8 or as a kind of advanced number 10. He can join the dots, can help. But Bruno, I think in the manager's eyes, the manager looks at him and says, Bruno's got the off-ball work to do that role, even though it's not perfect. Like I say, he's a bit wild off the ball sometimes. He's running around, arms are everywhere, scream, fall over, hold your ankle for a week. But he can do it. He can still do it better than maybe, say, Pellistri, maybe better than Rashford. So I think Rashford at times when they're going forward as a 3, I think might end up defaulting to the right. So Garnacho can take those minutes. But I do think we'll see a lot of Bruno Fernandes on the right. And you just said, do I like it or not? I'm fine with it. I quite like Bruno as a right-sided player because I think sometimes in the centre, Scott, he gets exposed. We're losing the ball. I've always said this. And I still want Bruno in the front line, like either as a 10 or in a wider capacity. But I want him up there. I don't want him back here with Casemiro. I don't think that helps Casemiro. It does help Bruno Fernandes.
Well, the thing is, like we talked about Bruno, like vacating the center of the pitch, and then we've often said at times, where does the creativity come from?
Yeah.
Now United actually have players in there. They have more options in there. So whichever preferred front 6 that we talk about here does not have to be the established front 6 because United now have depth. They have some strength in depth and different options, which is what I think Ten Hag has been after all along. And you put Bruno on the right-hand side. One of Bruno's favorite things to do is that through ball around the corner or in behind it or in between 2 centre-backs whether that's in midfield, in the center of midfield, from deeper or from wide. And we've seen it from wide at times in the past. I think that he assisted a Rashford goal from the right last season. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But that ball is on. And
Absolutely.
now United have a striker in Rasmus Højlund that can carry the same threat that Marcus Rashford can through the middle in behind. He can also hold it up. So that is now, I know we're talking positive. I don't want to get carried away too much, but I honestly think
it's reality.
I honestly think the difference that Rasmus Højlund will make to Man United's ability to progress the ball up the pitch is night and day from what we've seen for years.
100%. I'm totally with you with that. And you see, I don't think that is positive content. I think that's reality. I think that's where you are. That's the way the manager will be looking at it. I think the thing is that we talk about creativity quite a lot, and it's always been a bugbear at Man United. And it is just completely mad and ironic that you've got this guy in Christian Eriksen who is an elite creator and always has been. And you've been forced to use him in a number 8 role and in that 6-8 and deeper because you've not had options, have you? So now you've got some options. Guess what? Let the guy off the leash a little bit. And I think that I'm not a massive fan of Eriksen at 10 and Bruno wide because I'm not quite sure that that is the perfect combination, how things work. But I do like the idea of Mason Mount supplementing somewhere in there. Mason Mount's pretty decent in those wide areas, and he's got that nous to be able to come central, maybe to like squeeze the play so you can actually outnumber defenders with your attack. Like you just said there about Højlund. Højlund's got the ability both to run behind, but also we saw in that Arsenal game, he will quite happily turn his back to goal and say, I will join dots. Now, his former club, what he was really good at last year, and we all highlighted, was that he was great at coming into that false position and allowing runners. I think Bruno Fernandes will love that. I think Bruno will love having a bit more space on the right, just up against the left back. And the left back will be thinking, I can't bomb on because Bruno Fernandes is elite in this area. He can create and he can slide the ball through me. That's good for Man United, Scott.
As an alternative, though, we saw at times in that Arsenal game of Højlund's movement in the box to create a yard.
Yeah.
So you put Bruno out there. One of Bruno's favorite things to do is to cross the ball from that pocket.
Yeah.
And now we've not really seen that actually happen too much because United don't have an aerial threat at centre forward, but now they do.
Totally. Look. Last night in international break, the Netherlands won. Guess who scored a header in the box?
Fouty.
Yeah. Wout Weghorst. Do you know why he scored that header, Scott? Because they crossed the ball for him. So, like, Højlund needs service. So this is the way it has to be, is that if you don't cross the ball for your forward, whoever they are, whether they're good or bad, they haven't got the chance to score that goal. So now I think United, if Bruno Fernandes on that right-hand side, Scott, sitting just outside the channel, Bruno's going to get his head up, and that young lad is going to be running the front post every time. And guess what? You might get his head on the ball and you might score. United didn't do that at all last year. There was nothing from the wide area. The production was zero. That's also where Jadon Sancho comes into it, because I think Jadon needs a striker through the middle to be able to play his best type of game. But I think if Bruno's on the right, Bruno needs something to work with. He needs to cross the ball in. And Bruno can do all the off-ball stuff, Scott, but he's still your architect. He's still the conductor of the band. But can you imagine if Eriksen's somewhere in there as well, and Mason Mount? You then have creators in that final third, and that's going to help Rashford on the left. It will help Garnacho when he's there. But more than anything, it's going to really help Højlund.
Yeah, we've given you a bunch of alternatives there, and we haven't. That's without Jadon Sancho actually being reintegrated into the team.
Exactly.
But also, we haven't mentioned Palestri, who is a different option. And like, I think what we're trying to establish here is that there are options and there are choices which can be made. It doesn't have to be the same thing each time. It can be dependent on the opposition, can be dependent on the point in the game, the scoreline. If United are winning 1-0, how do you want to sit back in and soak it up? Do you want an attacker who can go on the right-hand side and stretch the line? You know, Palistri, if you're chasing a goal and you want a different option, you can bring him on the right, you get to the byline and cut it back, you know, because he's willing to do that. So now I think Ten Hag has always talked about having a squad and having options. So I think now we're at a point where more than we've ever been, really, even with there are dark clouds over United at the moment in a number of situations. But just looking at what they do have on offer, if they can get their heads on football, players on the pitch, there are ways that they can score goals.
And we didn't even mention Antony Martial. So, like, the thing is, there is numbers there at least now in that zone of the pitch, isn't it? And I think you said it to start, and I've said it before. Definitely, I want to see Rashford be the primary player on the left, because I think, like, look how better we've looked, Scott, when he's there. Like, it's just there for the eyesight. Everyone can see how much better United are when Marcus Rashford is running from the left and running that channel and running that fullback. And you just need to find a balance now. And I think if Højlund comes in and hits the ground running and gives United that extra option there, I feel safer about Bruno maybe moving out of the 10, and I feel safer about Eriksen moving forward. And Amrabat now is going to be huge in this. Is that if you can keep him fit, fingers crossed you can, I think that 4-2-3-1 again will make sure that you win more games than you lose. And that's really what this is all about, is finding a method and a rhythm. And Jadon Sancho then is just a conversation, isn't it? It's just, Jadon, can you provide from the bench? And then maybe Jadon Sancho can force his way in. Will Jadon Sancho look inside, see Højlund, and feel the Haaland vibes? I think he might.
This isn't a comparison to Erling Haaland. This is just, we're saying that he will have somebody to play off and somebody to hit with a cross. Because that's Sancho's game. He likes the 1-2s, he likes the little intricacies, and he's not had a player who can do that.
One of the things that Haaland used to do at Dortmund, and it worked so well with Sancho, is that he would run the right channel a lot, right? And then he would suddenly switch to the left suddenly in games. And Jadon would spot that and move into that area. So they'd almost kind of have two up the top end like that. And Haaland, everyone was obviously so scared of him that he would attract all the attention that way. And I think that's where Højlund will end up being. He'll be a diversion. He won't be someone like Martial who stands off and people kind of stand off him and go, well, do you know what? He's only going to do this, or this. So he's not going to run in behind. He's not going to work us. I think this player will do that. And I think someone like Sancho will be able to, again, move into advanced positions. And Bruno will be able to come that and end up being a kind of third man runner coming from that side on the right. So I feel good about that. That's all positive. That is something that if I'm the manager, I'm thinking, yeah, I can craft this. I can make it work. So exciting times, I think, with having a number 9 there, because it changes the whole dynamic of that front 4, but also the whole front 6 gives you something a little bit different. It means you can go and hurt teams in different ways than you did last season.
So there you go. Some positive. Some negative. Other injuries to Lisandro Martinez and Amrabat? Should we be worried?
No, not worried. But one of the things that we chatted off camera, and I said I wanted to talk about, was about the whole international break and how it works and what they do. Obviously, our players have gone and reported for international duty. Martinez was injured, we knew. Amrabat, his injury was picked up, a back injury in his medical. Now, the way it works, and I don't know if all football fans kind of know this, is that you must report for training no matter what, unless your country agrees with you offhand that you can stay at your club for treatment. For serious injuries, that's generally how that works. So I'm not surprised those two players actually reported for training. But Scott, they need to come back. And I think this is where Man United needs to be stronger, because Man United need to say, you go there for an hour or two, you get seen by the club doctor, you get cleared that you're injured, and then come back. And that's not been the case. We're hearing that Martinez might be used, might not be used, will be looked after, won't be looked after.
I think they played last night, didn't they?
I don't think he played in the end. And I think
Argentina played, but
I actually don't think he's fit. So, like, I think this is the crux of it. And if you're not fit, Scott, you should be at Carrington getting treatment. So I think, again, shows a little bit of kind of poor organizational skills from United's doctors from behind the scenes, because that should be the kind of the demand, is that these players play for us. We pay their wages. They're employees of our football club. They need to come back. So that's the only thing I'm going to say. That I'm not worried about his injuries. They are relatively minor. Very happy about the Martinez one, because we were worried about that. We thought that might be more serious. But you just said about injuries. Kobe Manu, hopefully, will be back in 2 or 3 weeks. We are expecting the same with Mason Mount. You've got players coming back now, and you've just got to somehow keep them fit. We don't know about Varane. Like, what's the latest on him? Have we heard anything extra?
I haven't heard anything extra.
No, and I think no news is bad news in that case. So we will see, they will see how he goes, but I think you're going to have to accept that Victor Lindelof's going to be starting quite a few games in that position this season, because you haven't really got a lot of cover. So you desperately need Martinez to be fit, don't you, in the weeks ahead?
Yeah, just checking the Argentina team. They beat Ecuador 1-0. I think Leo Messi scored a free kick. And no Lisandro Martinez. Alejandro Garnacho wasn't in the squad, and Garnacho was on the bench. What about Amrabat?
Sent home, I think. I think he's been released now. I think Morocco have named a replacement for him in their squad for their games. So that's positive, because that means you'll be back to Manchester. I think, again, going to a new club, settling in. I'm sure you'll be looking getting his house sorted and being in a hotel and living that life. So it's quite good to get him into the treatment room and getting him acclimatized before the next football match. I think he's going to be a huge part for us now.
Alrighty, let's move on. Give some flowers to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Rob.
Why does Rob want to do this? Because people saying to me, why are you so interested in this part with Aaron Wan-Bissaka? I've made lots of content over the years. I'm glad some of you have watched it. Thank you very much. But I've done lots of shows, and we used to do the United Masterclass on how bad Aaron Wan-Bissaka is. Positionally, technically, on the ball, all through the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer reign. Now, I was told not so long ago that Aaron Wan-Bissaka was finished at Man United from someone quite significant at the football club. And that's how everyone felt. And
I have also heard the same. Yeah.
Yes. So he had significant problems behind the scenes with the court case, and that ran its course, and that's all fine. And there was nothing like sinister or anything about that. And it affected him, it affected his form, and he couldn't really get on the football pitch and be any good. Erik ten Hag comes along, and kind of everyone expected to show him the door, like say, you don't do what I need a fullback that does this. And United were in the market for a right back. We're now on the absolute cusp of Aaron Wan-Bissaka signing a brand new, bigger contract at Manchester United on a bigger wage. Why? It's because the boy has proved it. Now, if you want to believe all the Twitter experts and analysts, Aaron Wan-Bissaka is still not very good. I still get people tweeting me yesterday, oh, well, he can't do this, he can't do that. Aaron Wan-Bissaka has come a really long way in the last 6 months. That's my opinion. And I'm not saying my opinion is worth anyone else's at the end of the day, but if you cannot see how good he's become or becoming, there's no point. Like, you might as well just get rid of him now and buy a new right back. But I'm really proud of what he's done, Scott. I really am. I look at him and I think, wow, you had your back against the wall here, and you had to fight to get back in this team. And I always felt in my head he was better than Delo. Always in my head, I was like, he's got more potential defensively, offensively, rounded game. But I never thought he could invert, Scott. I never thought he could go into midfield and play football and be in that midfield box that's so tactical and talked about all the time now with the midfield 4 box. And he comes into that and makes that number. So flowers for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. And I did a poll saying, do you think Aaron Wan-Bissaka should now be in the England squad? And I think 73 or 74% said yes. Now, of course, you're all Man United fans who follow me. So that's where that's come from. But I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka does deserve to be in the England squad. Like he hasn't been in it rightfully for a long time. But he never did go and play for, I think, Congo in the end. He decided he had the chance and said no. And he's had multiple chances and said no. So he's still eligible to play for England. People might say Trippier is better. They might say Walker gives you something different. But I think going forward, like, how long's Walker going to last in years to come? I still think Aaron Wan-Bissaka is a very good young footballer. He's not completely young now, but he's certainly, I think, on a development path, which means he might well be in international football for England in the near future.
Yeah, let us know in the comments how you think, if you agree with Rob. Or
what do you think, Scott? On the spot.
I think it's still a stretch currently. I need to see. I'm not English, so I don't really care. And ultimately, from a selfishly, yes, I would take. I would take him. I would take him for Wales. I would.
You'll be captain.
Yeah, I think there's more. I think he just needs to do it. I'm not saying he hasn't had a good few months. I just think that right back position is a position where England have probably more depth than in any other area of the pitch. You mentioned Trippier there. I think as much as Kyle Walker is getting on a bit, I just think the speed that he has going backwards is just so important.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, you have Trent there. Although he's played in midfield at some points. You have Reece James, who's been continuously injured. Trippier, even Ben White, you could talk about.
Yeah.
And
that's why he's not in the squad.
Yeah.
That's
because
truth.
of the... Yeah. But I'm with you in the fact that none of those defenders can offer you defensively what Aaron Wan-Bissaka can offer you. I personally think that. Apart from maybe Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker can... But he's one-on-one... I think they're both difficult to beat, but I think as Walker ages and, eventually, maybe after the Euros, he concentrates on club football or something like that. I'm not sure where he stands with that. But Wan-Bissaka, if he keeps going, if he keeps progressing, I think there's a conversation there to be had. It's too early for me, though, personally.
And also, I think it depends who the England manager is. So we know who the England manager is now, because tactically, when you look at what he does, he's not really having any inversion, is he? Like, this is, he's an old school manager in Gareth Southgate. People might say, oh, no, he's not. He's new school. He's got all these modern methods. Well, no, he still likes to kind of play very set systems. That's why you see Harry Maguire still in the squad. That's why Harry Maguire still plays football for him and doesn't play for us. So I actually think that Wan-Bissaka will continue to excel in a system where he's got a manager that is teaching him to invert and come into midfield and be more ball dominant and help on the ball a little bit more. That's not what you'd be at right back for England, is it? You would be either Cole, you'd be Walker, wouldn't you? Either running backwards and forwards in straight lines, trying to cover yourself. Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's fallen out of favour at right back, is more of a midfielder now, isn't he? Kind of playing in the middle, and he won't do that for England. So I think it's hard for maybe Wan-Bissaka to show that skill set, because otherwise it's just be always in the team to tackle. And I don't think that helps anyone, does it? It doesn't help him. Whereas I think at United, his skill set is definitely growing, and that's the bit I'm invested in. That's the bit I want to see develop now in the next few months.
Let us know what you think on Aaron Wan-Bissaka, because I think it's a good conversation to have. And we're trying to spin a positive. We're trying to spin positives on today's show, because it is quite easy to not be positive currently. But there are positives. If ideally you'd want United to play tomorrow and get a win, and change. It doesn't fix everything. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't fix everything, but it would help. Let's just say that. But yes, Bruno Fernandes' birthday today, 29 years old.
Happy birthday, Bruno.
Happy birthday, Bruno Fernandes. Wow, we're wishing somebody a happy birthday. That is content. There you go. Anyway, happy birthday, Bruno Fernandes. I think still as important as he ever has been. And we've obviously discussed there the amount of roles that he can play. There's some he maybe can't play, and we've tried. But there's enough in that midfield area now to put him in the positions on the pitch where he's strongest and he can benefit the team the most, I think. So hopefully in his 29th year or 30th, he's approaching 30 now next year. This time that should be 30. Hopefully we can see the best of him. And he makes the team tick, doesn't he, still?
Yeah, look, he's the figurehead of the team, isn't he? And like your senior players, I think, have to do that and take their responsibility. And again, when I'm critical of Bruno, it's mainly just because I want him to do other things a little bit better. That's really it for him. But I do think we'll see him on the right-hand side, Scott, now, because I think last year that was the default. Whenever there was an issue in the team, whether it be an injury or tactical change, Bruno ended up on the right. That was just the default for the manager. So I don't think Ten Hag's changed, do you? And it's like, I think that's what we'll see. And Mount might be used in the kind of more number 10 position. Would see Mount in a wide position. That's what he did at Chelsea. Like,
he can do that, of course.
He's more off the left, I think, and that is you're well stocked on the left. But he's brought Mount to play. Like, Mount is being brought in to be an important part of this front line. As much as fans haven't taken to him and don't see it, that's what Ten Hag wants. So I think that's what we'll see.
Quick note on Bruno there. I think that's it for us today. We've given you 43 minutes of, well, I'd say 35 minutes of positivity, hopefully. I don't know where we exactly started on the positive side of things, but we ran through the options on the right-hand side in the absence of, potential absence anyway, of one or two players. And United have a next game against Brighton, which will be difficult next Saturday at Old Trafford. Not this Saturday. There is some internationals to get out of the way. I think the big thing for me is just hoping that United put this Jadon Sancho episode to bed as quickly as they possibly can.
Definitely. And I called it storm in a teacup, and I'm going to stick by that, because Manchester United have got a much more serious thing coming with another player, and that will need to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with professionally and swiftly. And I think Jadon will just become a footnote and just back in the squad, get on with the training. United need to kind of put that fire out now as quick as possible.
Yeah, thanks for watching or listening. If you listen to the podcast on audio or if you watch on YouTube, we appreciate the support. Please like the video so it's suggested to more people so we can continue to grow the channel. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And on YouTube, we are at The Promised Land, a Manchester United podcast as well. So give us a search if you haven't already. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell too. And follow us on socials at @_ Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok, at @_Rob_B on Twitter and YouTube. Subscribe to Rob's channel as well, and at PromiseLandMU on Twitter as well, or X. Yeah, still not used to it yet. Anyway, that is it from us. We'll be back on Tuesday next week to see how things, whatever's happening. If we can talk about it, we will. And we will see you guys soon. We really appreciate you continuing to watch and continuing to listen. We see your comments as well. And maybe we'll have some time to run through some comments next week if things settle down a little bit, Rob. But
yeah, we'll do a comment show. Yeah, stick it in the comments, ask us questions, and we'll answer them for you.
Yeah. Thanks to Rob. Thanks to you for listening. I've been Scott. See you soon, everyone, for another Promised Land Manchester United pod.